Nobody at the diner knows who you are. That's the whole point. You're in the same booth every Wednesday, 7:51 in the morning, give or take. 2 eggs over medium, black coffee, $1.95, and a newspaper you fold the same way your father folded it. The waitress, her name is Lurleen. She's been working the morning shift here for as long as you've been coming in. She keeps a pen behind her ear she never writes with. She calls you by your first name. She thinks you're a building inspector. Something about how you look at the ceiling tiles when you walk in, she said once. You've got that inspector way about you. You smiled. You said, yeah, something like that. Your phone buzzes. You look at it once, just once, then turn it face down on the table. It's a dashboard alert. 18 rental units in Greenville just auto-collected this month's rent. $41,200. No phone calls, no chasing anyone, no drama. You take a sip of coffee. This is your life. And it looks like nothing people picture when they hear the word. It started 11 years ago with a broken ice machine, which is not the origin story anyone wants to hear. No garage in California, no mentor at a conference who changed your life. Just a Tuesday afternoon outside a bait and tackle shop in Greenville, South Carolina, and a coin-operated ice machine that ate your $2 and gave you nothing. You were 27. You were a scheduling coordinator at a freight brokerage making $39,000 a year, and you were miserable in a quiet, manageable way. The kind of miserable where you still showed up on time. You slapped the machine. Nothing came out. You went inside and told the man at the counter, and he gave you the shrug of someone who stopped caring a long time ago. And he said the sentence. He said, I don't own that thing. Some outfit does. And you stood there in the parking lot in the heat, and you couldn't put the question down. Everybody buys ice. Every fisherman, every cooler, every backyard party, all summer long. And the company that owns this machine can't be bothered to fix it, because one machine outside one bait shop is too small for them to care about. You did math that night at your kitchen table for almost an hour. Cold dinner on the stove. You called 4 ice machine operators the next morning. 3 never called back. The 4th explained the whole revenue model to you in about 10 minutes, and then told you kindly that it was a lot of work for very little money. You placed 2 machines within the month. First month, after every single cost, you cleared $280. You know how small that is. You knew it then. Standing in your bathroom looking in the mirror thinking, is this stupid? But the number was never the point. The architecture was the point. The people who understand what I'm about to walk you through don't show up looking for the big move. They already know the big move is built out of 100 small things nobody else was paying attention to. Subscribe if that's you. You reinvested every cent. Second location by month 5. By month 13, 11 machines and a different question. What else runs like this? You told nobody. Not your folks, not your friends. It felt too small to mention, and by the time it stopped being small, the silence had already become the whole structure. Here's what nobody tells you about real money. The quiet is not modesty. It is not a strategy you read about somewhere. It is armor. The second someone truly knows, not suspects from your shoes, but knows, something shifts in their face that never quite shifts back. You've watched it happen, a small recalibration. You're not a person to them anymore. You're a solution to a problem they've been carrying for years. Their cousin's food truck becomes your business. Their underwater car loan becomes a conversation they want to have at Thanksgiving. They don't mean anything by it. It took years to stop being bitter about that. They genuinely don't mean anything by it. But the relationship has a new room in it now, and every conversation after that happens with that room in the house. So you built a life designed not to be seen. The car is a 2019 Toyota RAV4, silver, 88,000 miles. There's a cracked cup holder you've never replaced because, honestly, who cares? When someone at an event asks what you drive and you say RAV4, you can actually watch them quietly lower their estimate of you. That downgrade is useful. That downgrade protects you in a way no luxury car ever could. The apartment is clean, 2 bedrooms, a quiet street on the east side of town. You own the building, have owned it for 6 years, but you live in Unit 3C and your name on the mailbox looks like every other name on every other mailbox. Mr. Okafor in 2A, retired city bus driver, spent 20 minutes in the hallway one morning telling you about the light that had been buzzing and flickering outside his door for a week. The landlord, he called him, couldn't be bothered to answer an email. You nodded. You apologized on behalf of the landlord like you were his spokesman. You called your property manager from the stairwell before you even reached your floor. Electrician was there by noon. A few days later, there was a note slid under your door. For the kind young man in 3C, thank you for listening. It's on your refrigerator. It has been for 2 years. There is something about that note that reaches you in a way the account balance never has. You try not to look at that too closely. The ice machines funded the first real purchase. A self-service car wash on a corner lot. The kind of place between a gas station and a grocery store that everybody drives past and nobody sees. The car wash funded a duplex in a neighborhood you knew from your old freight routes. The duplex funded a 12-unit, then a cluster of storage units behind the interstate, just sitting there collecting rent from people who would pay for years and rarely visit. Then a man named Wendell, 64 years old, ran a commercial landscaping company, sat across from you in a huddle house on a Wednesday morning over eggs, and said the thing sellers always eventually say. He said, I just need to know my guys will be taken care of. You looked at him and you said, I'll make sure of it. And you meant it. He believed you. The deal closed in 19 days. Then a fleet of ATMs in convenience stores and motels, charging $3 a pull to people who needed cash at 11 at night. Then a small medical courier company. Then a row of highway billboards, your name on none of them, assembled across more than a year through 3 different brokers, none of them ever seeing the whole picture. Then parking lots in 2 smaller markets, the kind you found by reading city tax notices online at 11:45. On a weeknight with a bowl of cereal in your lap, nobody reads those notices. Nobody. None of it loud. None of it the kind of thing that comes up when someone asks what you do. Here's the thing about boring businesses that nobody says out loud. They don't need you to believe in them. They don't trend. Nobody writes an article about a coin-operated car wash making $9,000 a month. They just sit there making money while everyone else chases the thing that shines. The best business you will ever own has no logo anyone recognizes, no pitch deck, and nobody has ever once asked you about it at a party. Your accountant, Priya, sharp, exact, 6 years doing your books, looked at the whole portfolio once and called it relentlessly unremarkable. She meant it as a small criticism. You took it as a compliment, and she could tell, and that seemed to bother her a little, which you also didn't mind. People think adventure is an island somewhere, a jet, a table at a restaurant with no prices on the menu. That was never the thing. The real thing, the actual electricity, is finding something broken that everyone else has walked past. And that brings us to the loneliness, because it's real. Not the kind that keeps you up at night, just a quiet, steady fact. There are whole conversations you can't have. Whole parts of yourself that live in a room nobody gets to walk into. Your best friend since high school is named Cole. Genuinely one of the best people you know. Runs a small heating and cooling crew, works harder than almost anyone, has been stuck at the same ceiling for years. Not for lack of skill. For lack of capital and the kind of access capital quietly creates. He told you once over a beer that he just needed one break. One thing to go his way. He's been saying it for years. You've been listening for years. And, with complete certainty that you could erase most of his stress with a check you could write in under a minute. You didn't write the check. And that is not coldness. You need to understand that. Because years ago there was Marcus. You gave Marcus $35,000 because he had a plan and a way of talking about it that made you want to believe him. The money was gone in 13 months. The friendship took 2 years to come back, and it came back quieter, with a scar on it that neither of you ever names. What you learned is that money without readiness doesn't build anything. It just accelerates whatever is already there. And the friendship is the collateral when it goes wrong. So instead, you spent 4 Saturdays at Cole's kitchen table. You walked through how to approach a community lender. You went through the numbers on a small commercial space he had his eye on. You talked about it like a guy who'd read a lot, not a guy who does this every week. He got the financing on his own 7 weeks later. The deal closed. It's working. He texted you, man, I don't know how you knew all that. You said you read a lot. He said you were strange. You said, yeah. And a few weeks later, he called and said, I ran the exit numbers 3 times before I signed. Never done that in my life. I think I'd just been guessing my whole life. This was the first time I actually knew what I was buying. Yeah, that's the whole thing right there. You crossed $720 million in total asset value on a Thursday afternoon. Priya sent the reconciliation at 3:19. Subject line, 3rd quarter summary. No exclamation point. Priya is not an exclamation point person. You are not an exclamation point person. That is almost certainly why this has worked. You were standing in a Piggly Wiggly in the cereal aisle, genuinely deciding between two brands of grits because one was 2.69 and one was 3.19, and you couldn't remember which you actually liked. You read the email once. You stood there a second. You bought both. You drove home in the RAV4, you made dinner, the 3.19 grits, which were in fact better. You sat on the balcony and watched the street and drank a beer that cost about $1.20 from a six-pack you'd bought on Tuesday. Nobody called to congratulate you. Nobody knew. The town moved exactly the way it always moves. Unhurried, enormous, indifferent. There was something in your chest, though. Not pride exactly, not relief. Something closer to recognition, like a slow nod at yourself across a very long stretch of time. You thought about a 27-year-old standing in a parking lot, in the heat with $2 an ice machine had just eaten. You thought about every boring Friday night reinvested instead of spent. Every deal nobody saw. Every room kept shut. He would not believe this. Not for 1 second. Every single boring Thursday was worth it. Then you finished the beer, washed the pan, and went to bed. Wednesday morning, same booth. 2 eggs over medium. Your phone shows a property report from the storage facility, a quarterly note from the landscaping company, and a missed call from a number that turns out to belong to a man who's run a regional plumbing supply business for 22 years and added 3 weeks ago the words, "thinking about what's next," to his profile. You write his name in a small notebook. The notebook has 9 names in it. Lurleen comes by, pen still behind her ear, still unused. Same time next week? Same time next week. She refills your coffee without asking. She doesn't know you own 3 buildings within 4 blocks of where she's standing. She doesn't know your ATM is in the gas station she passes every morning, that the parking lot she uses on her double shift days charges $7 and has for 2 years, and that the money routes quietly into an account she will never see. She knows you're the Wednesday guy. Booth by the window. Tips well. Always brings a paper. And across the street, there's a drive-through coffee kiosk with a faded closed sign that's been in the window for months. You noticed it 6 weeks ago. You've driven past it 8 times. You ran the property records on your phone while waiting on takeout one Friday. The owner is a 69-year-old man named Hollis who moved to Gulf Shores after a knee replacement and never came back. The equipment's older, but it runs. The corner is almost insultingly good. You finish your coffee, you take the long way out. You photograph the phone number off the sun-faded sign. The paint is peeling at the edges. You save it under coffee kiosk, Hollis. You'll call Thursday morning. Not too eager. Somewhere out there, right now, more than 30 boring businesses are running without you. The morning light comes through the diner window. That's enough. That's more than enough. So here's what I want you to sit with. The opportunities to build this were never hidden. They were everywhere. The ice machine, the car wash, the storage lot, the billboard. You drove past them your whole life and never saw them because they were too boring to notice. The rich don't see different things. They see the same boring things differently. Tell me honestly in the comments. Now that you know, would you actually buy the boring business and reinvest quietly for 11 years? Or would you need the world to see it? Because that one answer decides whether you could ever really live the silent life. And if you want more stories like this one, subscribe. Because next time the number is bigger and the secret is harder to keep. Next time you don't have 720 million. You have 4 billion, and staying invisible becomes almost impossible.